Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan here for an Inside the Birds that gets closer and closer to everybody's favorite time of the year, the new league year, free agency. Except, Adam, it is not seemingly a favorite time of the year for Eagles fans. In fact, I think we would be good to spend a few minutes early on in this podcast, and I can't even believe we're doing it already because free agency hasn't even started. But I think we sort of have to help people out, like relax, calm, assuage fears, concerns about the long-term viability of the Eagles like next year because of what they're expecting. Now, we're not going to sit here and bullshit or sugarcoat people. The Eagles are going to lose a lot of defensive players. There's no, I mean, Howie Roseman said that, when you start talking comp picks, you know what's going on there. But at the same time, I think people forget sometimes, when you're worried about something, you resort to extremes, right? There's an in-between world here. Yes, you're losing a ton of players and probably on paper will not be as talented as you were last year on defense. No, though, it doesn't mean Howie's throwing. I've heard people say we're going to have a terrible defense. Howie's throwing in the white towel. He's rebuilding. He's looking for 2024. No. For as long as you and I have covered the Eagles, Howie Roseman has never waved the white flag on competing or trying to do his best to put the best team available with the resources available that he has. He's going to have less resources this year because once Jalen gets paid, Jalen Hurts, that changes the mathematics and everything. And again, it will be difficult to have as much talent as he had last year because that was just a magical offseason for him. But as we've spoken about, and I want you to talk about this too.
Sure.
Howie will be aggressive on that second, third, well, what we call the secondary free agent market, 2 to 3 weeks in. There's going to be a trade. The way CJ Gardner became available, the way Bradberry, there will be opportunities for him to get good players to add to this defense so that when they play next year, I expect the Eagles to be a competitive team that competes for first place in the division and to make another deep run in the playoffs because we know their offense is going to be one of the best, if not the best in the league. It's all intact. It may lose a little bit here and there, but so speak to that. Help people out who are very worried right now that the Eagles are basically punting on 2023 to be able to be better in 24.
They're not, but my buddies who are season ticket holders, who I talked to earlier this week, they're like, what are we going to have on defense? It's like, look, they know they're going to walk away from some players. They also have to be competitive. You can't walk away from like 8 players. They may walk away from 6.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and by the way, we for our Patreon subscribers, we have Rick Spielman on, former Vikings GM, and he said something really interesting, which I just had to think about it because I know it's happened with Eagles, not so much, but with other teams more. What happens is some of these guys get to market on Monday, at 12 p.m. Eastern. That's when you can start getting deals done. Can't sign, but you can agree. It's rare that guys back out. And sometimes they just don't get what they want. Rick talked about that. He said there were a bunch of examples of that happening with him when he was a Vikings GM.
Right.
So maybe that happens. And look, they may do some restructures. We had a question about, if we have time, I think Rashard Grimsley asked a great question about potential of Lane Johnson slaking restructures. If we have time, we'll do it today. But if not, we'll do it next. We'll do it for Money Show for you. Great question. But you're right. They're just, they don't live in, oh my gosh, they have to do this or the season's over. They don't live in that. Now, I get the overreaction. Rick talked about that actually. He literally, we never even brought that up. He brought that up because Rick's on the media side and he knows outside the building, you have to shut the noise down about this guy's walking, that guy's walking out, sky's falling.
Right.
You have to be careful with that stuff. And I get it. But I also understand from a fan standpoint, they want things now.
Yeah, no. I mean, but the funny thing is, like, we're not even at free agency yet. So to Rick's point that he made, and you're echoing it, like, it seems like they're going to lose every single guy, but I don't think they're going to lose every single guy. And no matter what they lose, no matter what remember, if it's heavy losses at linebacker, you got Nakobe Dean. They drafted him. You have to hope that that works out. If you have heavy losses somewhere else, there's the trade market. There's the veteran. They've hit the veteran free agent market pretty well over the last few years, whether it was not just James Bradberry. Who else am I? Like Chris
Reddick?
Long was a late, like Garrett Blunt. I mean, Patrick Robinson. I mean,
the late group.
they've
Yes,
been
a great point.
good free agent team, and not necessarily not just the Hassan Reddicks of the world and the money makers, but they've done a nice job. I mean, finding different ways to bring in talent. Are they going to be as talented pound for pound as they were last year on defense? That's going to be awfully difficult, but they still will have Josh Sweat. They still will have Hassan Reddick. They will hope that Jordan Davis rounds into form a little bit. They still have Darius Slay. They have 2 first-round picks. It's very, very, very possible they spend 2 first-round picks on 2 defensive players. So this team, like we said about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Chiefs were more talented a year or 2 ago when they had Tyrann Mathieu and Tyreek Hill. But this year, they won the Super Bowl with a lesser talented team because they were just a smarter team. Patrick Mahomes was more mature. So you have an Eagles team that's going to have a lot of good veterans on it and a quarterback who just played out of his mind, who has still room to grow. So all I'm saying for people is relax. I feel like Aaron Rodgers, relax. And I know it's going to happen because as soon as those guys start signing, Hargrave here, Bradberry there, TJ Edwards, it's going to feel really hard. It's going to be painful, right? Because some people still aren't over the Super Bowl. But just remember what you felt like when the trade for CJ Gardner went down. Remember how you felt like months or weeks into free agency when the Giants finally reached Bradberry and the Eagles signed him. You felt really good. You felt confident. So try to have that understanding that you might
trust Howie.
Might feel sucked right
Howie
now.
Here.
Yes, that's a good one. Trust Howie. Howie doesn't do everything right. I get that. You don't have to have unilateral trust in it, but trust that at least you know that he's not punting. He's going to try his best to figure out a way to get talent back on defense. Will you take some lumps? Sure. Are you winning 15 out of 17 games next year? Probably not. Again, doesn't mean you can't contend for a Super Bowl. So I just thought that was I was just really surprised by some of the things I was hearing on sports radio. Like, I can't believe he's not being aggressive. Like, what? First of all, like, nothing started yet. I mean, yes, I know he could have re-signed some guys now, but I think the best point of this is let's see what these guys do on the market. You never want to overpay for somebody, because I remember people blaming Howie, and rightfully so, for overpaying for some guys or hanging on to some guys too long after the 2017 season, right? Now you can't do the same thing on the other side with Howie and say, oh, you're not bringing back guys that you should be back, even though they're getting a little older or more expensive perhaps than they should be. So let the process play it out. We'll see how it goes. Should be fun. I look forward to it. It all starts Monday.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Because I do sense panic, and I've learned. Now, it's funny. I think over the history of our show, I've actually done this a couple times. Like, man, why these? Man, I'm kind of surprised you haven't been involved. Then boom, boom, boom. In fact, I mean, you had AJ Brown was acquired during the draft.
Great point.
I forgot about the idiot. Yeah. I should have remembered that one.
Yeah. I mean, you could literally say Howie's Hassan Reddick signing was fantastic, but Howie's best moves of the offseason in totality came way after the first 2 weeks of free agency. Yeah, no doubt.
Isaiah White, by the way, it was a nice player. April 5th. It just I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't know we were going that direction, but it's a smart way to do it, because you have to trust the process. You just have to trust what Howie's doing. Right. I think we said this. It might have been last year when things were slow. The season starts in September, not in April or March. If the roster looks bad in September, then give them hell. Then they deserve it. That's very fair. Mm-hmm. But you have to give them time to get the thing done.
Yeah. By the way, they went to a Super Bowl and won it in 2017, and that defense on paper wasn't as good as this past year's defense too. So again, there's different ways to skin a cat, and I think the Eagles are still in a pretty good seat here in the NFC. We had Greg Cosell on for installment number 3 of the Intel for Greg Cosell. It's up on our podcast and YouTube platforms. We went through the defensive line, tackles, ends, 3 techniques, 5 techniques, edge rushers, A lot of good ones are available. Frank Clark became available earlier this week. We'll see what happens with him, but that's a pretty marquee name. So we went through all of them. Greg gave us breakdowns on not only Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, but a rising name that you got to watch from the Denver Broncos. I won't give it away, but there's a player on that team who's going to hit free agency and probably do a lot better. And maybe some people don't even know him because he's not even a household name. So make sure you check out there. I'm going to quibble a little bit with Cosell on one thing here. On his Javon Hargrave thing. It's not that I disagree with him. I think he's right that when a guy like Javon Hargrave hits the market, everybody's eyes get big and see sacks, and he's going to get money. There's no question in my mind he's going to get money. I thought Greg sort of said, hey, a lot of these three techniques, they get double teamed. Their run defense isn't that good. Sometimes it's not that big deal. I see it a lot. And I'm sure he does see it a lot because he watches more tape than anybody in the history of humankind. But there's no question that was a liability for the Eagles quite a bit in some of their toughest losses, including the Super Bowl. So I don't want to just act like he couldn't have done a better job there. Hargrave could have done a better job.
Yeah, I just had heard from other teams that, man, Hargrave sometimes he's just not because he's smaller, he's just not getting penetration to stop the run. I get it. He's there to get to the quarterback, but you'd like to see him better against the run. He's just, when you look at free agency at defensive tackle, it's like you just talk about guys who could rush the passer. He's kind of the reason why he's going to get a huge deal. I mean, Jaron Reed I like as a rotational third guy, who we talked about with Greg, but it's Hargrave and everybody else. Although he's 30, they're just not. There's just they're really no good pass rusher. Cox is obviously older. He can rush the passer, but he's 32. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's why it's a big reason why he's the best of the pass rushers, Hargrave.
No doubt about it. And you've said all along, you feel like there's a good chance that if one goes, the other stays. Are you still feeling that vibe?
I mean, a couple months ago. Yeah, I mean, I made that a month or so ago. Yeah, see here. I'm just using logic, right?
Right.
If they walk away from Cox and Hargrave, you've got Jordan Davis, who, yes, they wanted to play a lot, but he didn't have a great rookie season. We know he had a high sprain. So he's totally unproven. Who's going to play next to him? Milt Williams is a good 3. Okay, they could draft a guy, but we're not at the draft yet. I just think you have to ask yourself this question. How young do you want to get? I mean, I know for a fact, I remember talking to teams that were talking to the Eagles in Nick Sirianni's first year. They didn't want to say rebuild, but the gist of the conversations we had with people is it sounded like a semi-rebuild. That was the translation they were getting from Eagles people. But as you said, the Eagles have the Super Bowl. This is not the purge that the Ravens did. The Ravens, when they won the Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer, they had to purge the next season because they had a bad cap situation. That's not the situation. Mm-hmm. It's not like they don't need to rebuild. They have to retool a little bit because, as Howie said, you can't re-sign everybody. But it's not like they're not going to be competitive. You nailed it, man. I just so we can move on here. That's you and I see it the same way. They're not walking away from this not to trying to be good.
Right. You find another way. The Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill. He wanted too much money. I'm sure Kansas City fans went into the year like, really? Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS, and you didn't even do anything at running back, knowing that you didn't love CEH, or the best thing you did was bring in Rojo, right? I'm sure everybody was freaking out, and then they wound up like setting Patrick Mahomes set a record for his passing yards.
Sure.
So I mean, yeah. So all right. So that's good. Oh, by the way, I hope have you got a chance? We have an intern named Sam Finkel who really dabbles in the analytics, been doing unbelievable work on InsideTheBirds.com with some really good stories. It's a free agency preview series. His first 2 were on CJ Gardner-Johnson and Miles Sanders, looking at them from an analytics standpoint, how the market, he's done all the market research, how these guys stack up against current running backs, against free agent running backs, and against past free agent running backs. So all sorts of great projections as he breaks it down. Spider charts. We got spider charts up there. It's fantastic. So if you haven't been to InsideTheBirds.com and seen his great content, DeCecco has been writing really good stuff out of the combine on prospects. He wrote about the Pitt defensive tackle, whose name I have trouble pronouncing.
Kelce.
Kalijah Kalijah or Kalijah?
Kalijah, I think.
Elijah Kelce, right? Wrote about Antonio Johnson, the safety from Texas A&M. So he's doing really good. So, and the running back from Alabama. And we got our intern, Ben Paul, doing NFL roundups every day. So a lot of really good content on InsideTheBirds.com lately. We actually set a record 2 weeks ago for the number of views because we've been pumping out more content. So we appreciate that everybody's been visiting the site, bookmarking it, and checking it out. And for those who did miss the Rick Spielman interview that we did on our Patreon channel, you can sign up at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to become a member. And then, of course, you also get other perks like Adam Caplan's Wednesday night chats on Discord with our subscribers. You're getting some amazing questions, by the way. That's a really good,
Love it.
well-educated
Sharp,
conversation.
Man. These guys, and in fact, Tony brought up something I totally forgot about, Tony W, about the Eagles were definitely in on the John Johnson situation 3 years ago, but they weren't close. And he's going to be cut by the Browns. The Browns have already announced that they're going to cut him to start a new league year. He's only 27.
That shocked me, by the way. Shocked me.
Yeah, no, he was with he played in the Super Bowl for the Rams, year in 18. But yeah, it is weird sometimes when guys are much younger. Wait a minute, how long has this guy been in the league? How's he only 27?
I was shocked that Frank Clark isn't 30 yet. I just feel like he's been in the league forever.
Yeah, his production has gone down the last couple of years, but Greg does talk about it. Cosell does talk about it. I'm glad you brought him up in our show that we did with Greg this week. By the way, that was such a wonderful show. The DT and D and by the way, the other thing I want to mention, we're really grateful for the non-Eagle fans who come in and they go, hey, we're not Eagle fans, but man, we love this stuff and we appreciate that.
Greg brings them in from everywhere, man. It's pretty cool. All right, let's talk about some other things. And we're going to do, for our Patreon subscribers, we'll be getting our live Q&A session in soon, or Ask ITB session. Yeah. I like that. I can't steal from Q&A. That's their name. Ask ITB session.
That's right.
Pretty soon. We just want to get through a couple of days of free agency so we can better answer some of the questions. All right, well, one question that got answered was, how long is it going to take for Dennard Wilson to find a job? And the answer was not very long, which we could have told you, undoubtedly, because we knew about the respect. I mean, we talked about last week. You hit it on the head, calling it a big loss. It's an understandable loss. I mean, Nick Sirianni had to do what he felt was best for the team as far as hiring Sean Desai. But I mean, you know what? If you want to take a shot at Sirianni, though, for not figuring out a way to make it work with Dennard Wilson and keep him on the staff, I guess you can do that. That's fair. I mean, this is a good coach that they lost.
So I had two coaches reach out to me this week, and one guy with an exclamation point said, "What the hell's going on with Philly with Dennard Wilson?" And I said to the guy, "Listen, there are a lot of rumors out there, and we know for a fact they had some sort of disagreement. We're not exactly sure what it was, but that's irrelevant at this point. The fact is he's no longer there. They lost. I mean, obviously Stout's number one of the assistant coaches. If you wanted to say Dennard Wilson was number two, I wouldn't argue with you. This is a big loss. It's the first time I can remember criticizing Sirianni. I've been such a fan of his. I think he's been terrific.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to give you a quote for when Nick was asked. I know you were there. You were right front and center at the combine last week. When he was asked, here's the quote. Yeah, well, obviously about Wilson staying. Yeah, we'll obviously go through that as we continue on. Does the staff dynamic fit? Could you explain to me what that means?
That is you know what? It didn't register with me at the time. I think what he was trying to say is I now have a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Right. I do remember him saying that. And I felt like that was his way of saying, I got a new defensive coordinator who, by the way, has also coached defensive backs in the past. I have a defensive backs coach who lost out to this defensive coordinator. Yes. Do I have to worry about any kind of friction?
That's what I thought.
But honestly, that's what I thought he meant, and maybe he did, but I don't really like that he's thinking that way, sort of, because like this happens in the NFL all the time. Like guys get hired over other guys, and they got all. If you coach on offense, you probably coach running backs, tight ends, wide. The crossover happens. Like you got to get over that.
You have the same response I did. In fact, just talking to coaches over the years, I know you've heard this before. Coaches MF each other on headsets sometimes. They yell at each other. I don't know what happened between these two guys. I know our Marcus Hayes wrote about it more in depth is it the Inquirer? Is it Marcus writes for?
Well,
Or Daily
Inquirer
News?
Daily News. It's all one happy
Both.
company
Okay.
now, Philly.com.
Right. But his sourcing's pretty strong. We have some of the same stuff, some stuff we weren't aware of. But fact of the matter is, as you just said, you nailed it on the head. So we can move on. You got to make this work. I get it. He's got to make sure. He's got to just make sure Dennard was over, being that the guy who beat him out would be technically his boss, so to speak, or in terms of his direct report would be Desai. But man, that's a big loss. And boy, John Harbaugh could not be more. I mean, his quotes were very strong. They know they're lucky to get Dennard.
Yeah.
And it's a loss. See, here's the point. Had this been in January, it's still a loss. You can't underestimate that. But there's some good coaches that could have been available. Who in the world would let a guy walk right now in March?
I know, especially a guy with that much experience, a guy who you considered for your defensive coordinator job,
Sure.
and a guy who undoubtedly has done the best coaching job with this secondary that's been done in a long time.
Yeah, and two things. But what I also meant was, let's say they put a request in to talk to a coach, from another team in March. Why would a team not block that guy? Unless it's a young guy, maybe that someone recommended, and nobody, maybe the head coach of that team doesn't realize how good that coach is. Who knows? But it just, and look, it's how hard he coaches. He did a great job with Gardner-Johnson. Gardner-Johnson's not the easiest guy to deal with. That's why the Saints moved him. Did a great job with him, with Slay. The respect that they had for him. I mean, here's the thing: number one pass defense. We talked about this in the other show. Gardner-Johnson had a breakout season. Epps took another step. Slay was a Pro Bowler, and Bradberry bounced back in a major way. Maybe had his best year of his career, second team All Pro. Are you kidding me? Jeez, that's my piece on it.
Listen, I think you're echoing the sentiment of a lot of people, fans, other people in the media, like you said, coaches around the league or whoever you're getting text from. It just it sort of doesn't make sense. It feels like it didn't have to go down this way. That's
what I think. But again, I don't want to defend Sirianni, but we don't know exactly what the issue was between the two of them. But man, as you said very well, you got to get over it, man. You just can't lose your best coaches if you have a chance to keep them. But and here's the thing, because I know people are speculating, well, maybe he had an issue, maybe Dennard couldn't get over that Desai's would have been his direct report. We don't know that. Maybe someone does. We haven't heard that.
Right.
I can understand the sentiment, but the fact of the matter, he's gone, and they need to fill his job and two others.
Yeah, defense. So linebackers coach, secondaries coach, defensive quality control, and of course, one of these coaches is going to have some senior experience or some more than just a year or two in them, because that's what we were told Sean Desai wanted to bring into the staff. We thought it was going to be close with Patricia. At one point, we were hearing that name. Obviously, it hasn't. I can't say it hasn't happened yet, because we know the Eagles aren't going to announce all of their coaching. At this rate, the Eagles aren't going to announce their coaching staff until about 5 days before the start of the season, because that's the rate that's the pace that they're going at right now. I mean, they've got these jobs to fill, and they've also got free agency going on, and it just whatever, it's hard. It's hard to replace coaches this late in the year. Shane Steichen even talked about it. If you looked at Shane Steichen's staff, by the way, that must have been really difficult for him, because he didn't take one single guy from the Eagles when he put that. Not one single person on his coach has Eagles roots.
And he hinted in his press conference, he didn't use the term blocked.
Right.
It was Nick wanted to keep, his guy, his coaches. I get that, but he did, which is a hint that maybe he was told this is not going to happen. Why bother? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But Gannon got Nick Rawlis. I mean, I get he only coached inside linebackers, but did a really smart young coach.
Yeah, and then seemingly apologized for it.
I'm sorry?
And then he seemingly apologized for it in his press conference, saying something about a mistake that he didn't elaborate on. So you didn't know? We talked about that. He was asked about, this was at the Combine.
Okay.
He made an offhand remark when asked about Nick Rawlis on his staff and taking him over to Philly, where he used the word, it was a mistake. Something was a mistake. He wasn't saying Nick was a mistake. He obviously likes Nick, and he wanted that, but he said something about it being a mistake, and then sort of I think in the moment realized he had said too much and then switched and nobody followed up with him. So he insinuated in some form or fashion that maybe the way he went about taking Rallis from the Eagles was maybe not the way Nick Sirianni expected it to go down. So,
man.
yeah.
This is look, we're gonna trust them to get the best coaches. We'll comment. We know about McDonald. The DB's coach will be the in-house candidate. Outside, we'll see for DBs. And boy, this is a tough deal. I mean, it's kind of like the drawback of being a Super Bowl team. You just never know what's going to happen, and this is something we didn't know. We didn't foresee this happening. I don't know if they did either. Well, Gannon did. They knew. Well, I should say they didn't know it would pop up the Friday before the Super Bowl. It kind of came in late,
Yeah, definitely. All right, so you made a good point on Dennard Wilson. Really did a good job coaching CJ Gardner-Johnson, who as far as we knew, had been compared to what his reputation was in New Orleans as a guy who's going to get under your skin, and there's plenty of video footage of it with opponents, but even some of the guys he played with seemingly was all right with the Eagles. But that social media post obviously showed you, what's inside. I mean, he was not happy, deleted it. I think he said something about Gannon not putting him in the right place. And that couldn't have gone over well with the Eagles, who, really like Jonathan Gannon and felt like he did an excellent job, regardless of what the outside thinks. They were fans of Jonathan Gannon, and they're not happy.
Yeah, Spielman. Yeah, Rick on our Patreon interview, actually, he threw that in there, how much because he was with Minnesota. So, but the big one is, let's address the one or two posts he made earlier this week about the Eagles, whatever he said about the Eagles fans, which seems like a goodbye.
Oh, the love you, Philly? Yeah. All love, Philly. Yeah.
What I've learned about these things, I'm not saying he's not leaving, and we'll get into some other stuff, but and it was partially about what Rick Spielman was saying. Clubs just, if they want a guy back, they just ignore that stuff because it's Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern when these deals are going to start going off. If they don't figure out what his value is, obviously they know what they think his value is. That's how he could walk. Now, here's a question for you, and I want to get into this. How do you think they see him? Because I know other teams, because they like his versatility. How do you think the Eagles see him? I know you hinted at this show or two ago.
So it's interesting, that analytics series that I was talking to you about, that Sam Finkel is doing for us, really put some things into perspective, because there was a good breakdown of exactly who CJ Gardner was for the Eagles defense. It's easy to say he came here and played safety and he played it really well, which he did, but he was not for the Eagles a safety the way Kevin Byard is a safety for the Titans, right? Or the way Jesse Bates, who's about to become the highest paid safety in the league, I would imagine, in a few days, is for the Bengals. His snap percentage was spread out. Like, he played post, he played deep, he played nickel. So to kind of call him a safety the way those guys are is not right, because he moves around a lot, and a lot of his snaps were interior coverage. So I would say, without, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'll try to find it, exact snap breakdown, but he's something between a safety and a nickel corner, right? And because of that, while he might see that as being great optionality, and maybe another team would too, I think it's also fair to look at it and say, you should probably be paid somewhere between what a good safety and a good nickel corner makes. Now, Kevin Byard, right? Pro Bowl safety for the Titans. Signed an extension. Byard, I'm sorry. $14 million a year, which is top end right now for safeties. Avonte Maddox, one of the top end nickels. When he signed, it was about $8 million a year. So I would imagine, if I were a team like the Eagles or the Eagles, who know that I move this guy around and he plays safety sometimes, nickel sometimes, and I'm trying to meet it in the middle, I'm trying to get in the middle of 14 and 8, right? I'm not trying to go over 14, because he's not a Pro Bowl safety.
Sure.
I'm not trying to go under 8 because he's more than a nickel, right? And he was a good nickel in New Orleans. So to me, it feels like if you're doing an objective evaluation of it, he's probably a 10, 11, $12 million guy
10 to
because the
12.
market's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to get a little bit bigger
Sure.
once
Sure.
Bates signs, right? But I'm
Now,
sure he's thinking the opposite. I'm sure he's looking at his interception total, right, and everything he did this year, and saying I might be one of the top guys on the market after Bates or Poyer or whatever, and I'm just gonna
sure.
go reap the benefits. But I don't know that it's gonna work that way. And Adam, I sense that the Eagles are like, this is what I sense. This is what I would do. Why don't you go and see if teams value you that way? And maybe there will be a team that pays him way more money than the Eagles thought they were gonna have to pay.
Honestly, when I made those comments over 3 weeks ago, it wasn't a report, it was just an opinion. I know how much they like him, and this is a guy they wanted to bring back.
Right.
I didn't even think that, because we weren't even doing free agency stuff then. It was after the Super Bowl. My thing was like, okay, I've known for a while how much they liked him in terms of what he did. And remember, part of the slot stuff was when Maddox was out, because he'd come back from his lacerated kidney.
Mm-hmm.
But I never thought that they would look at it, view him as and obviously you get leverage when you look at him as a hybrid player. Sure, you're not getting 14 million. You're going to get between 10 and 12 most likely.
Right.
And you make a good point. Go out and test your value on Monday. If someone wants to pay him 13, 14 million, that's a different story. This is what Rick Spielman was talking about. See what your value is, and we'll talk. Because that's this guy. You heard what you heard. I'd have to say, of all Greg Cosell's comments on all players this season, I would say the strongest review that he's given to anyone, and he's given a lot of them, is Gardner-Johnson. He's just blown. I'll admit he was on him last year, but I don't know if anyone thought he could play at this elite level. Just think, had he not gotten hurt, what he would have done.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been amazing. But I would also say, what do you have, like 6 interceptions in 8 games,
Yes.
right? I don't think he was going to finish with 12 interceptions. I don't think he's Ed Reed. I think he's really good.
No,
I don't think he's Ed Reed.
I got you.
But the numbers sort of suggest that he was sort of on this, or is on this trajectory, and that's where I think the Eagles are being careful here, because up until this year, he was a good nickel corner. Again, that's an $8 to $9 million player a year. And they didn't move him to safety full time. In fact, I do have the snaps in front of me now. So, and this is again from Sam Finkel, our analytics intern, 23%, about 23.25, 23% strong safety, 55% free, 21% slot. So if you
He's
add
still a safety 70. Well, it's funny. I would have thought less at safety, to be honest with you.
Right, but I'm saying if you take the strong safety, which is more like linebacker, right? You're in the box, right? If you take that 23% and the 21% slot, you're basically at 45% of the time you're not really playing safety.
And that'll be the Eagles' argument to pay him less, and any other team, by the way, because that's why I brought this up, because I just running his name by other people, they see him as this real. I don't want to call him a specialty player. This guy, he's able to do jack of all trades. He's a very unique player. There's really no one that I could think of as anyone like this.
Right.
There's just no one like this. But we had a great comment on our YouTube. If they walk away from, because remember we posed a question: when's the last time the Eagles walked away from a you can almost call the guy a great player. When's the last time? And he goes, "Oh, I got one. It's Reggie White." Now, obviously, it's a little different, but this is in 1992. But they did. This is Reggie got his in 93, I guess, for free agency, 92 or 93. Reggie walked away and played for the Packers. But it's just not like the Eagles to walk away from players. But look, there's a money component. And I didn't even think about that 3 weeks ago, because I just know that where they saw him and they were going to try to bring him back. This is a guy they wanted back because he was pretty special. But I didn't think about, okay, they're going to look at us as this hybrid player. Didn't even think that, because we're not in free agency. So shame on me. Not doing that.
Yeah. Interesting also, the 21% that he played, or 23% he played in strong safety. Again, that shows optionality, but he was also really high among the I always get this phrasing bad. When I say leaders, I mean it in a bad way. The leaders in missed tackles and missed tackle percentage. So when he was in the box, just because he's versatile doesn't mean he's doing a very good job. We know he
Sure.
was not a very good run defender, missed a lot of tackles, 27th in quarterback rating allowed at 87.4. And there was another, he was like 8th in the league in yards perception around. He was good. He just, to think what Howie has to do and what any team has to do is, am I getting that great of a player for the next 3, 4, 5
Well,
years, and can I
it's
use him that
yes.
way that the Eagles did?
It's the turnovers though that he gets. As someone in
Tremendous, yeah.
coaching told me, whose team is looking at free agents at safety in particular, he makes up for some of the flaws. Maybe let's particularly a corner. You just when got he just sees it before. He just has this unique ability with which Greg talked about. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what
I
happens.
think, yeah, I agree with you. I listen. I think I'm not trying to downplay him at all. I'm just trying to figure out how a team would evaluate him. I do think
Sure.
he's probably a 12 to 13 million dollar player a year because
I'll
he
be
played.
interested to see if he gets it.
No, he might get more. He might get more. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, based on what the market here is and how he had a great year at the right time. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. 12.
Sure. Hey, let's look at what would happen. Okay, so under contract in the secondary is Darius Slay. Max is their slot. He's missed a lot of time. Good player, but he's missed time. What if Bradberry, Epps, and Gardner-Johnson walk? What's this thing going to look like?
Like we said, you got to give Howie a couple of weeks. You never know. I mean, John Johnson got released, right? Maybe he's still hanging around.
He's going to, yeah.
Yeah, or going to, right? Maybe he's hanging around. There's going to be somebody hanging around. I didn't think Frank Clark was going to get cut that quickly. I thought maybe they would
his contract
test the market first. And
yeah,
I know. That's right. He probably had
a
some
restructure.
If he was on the team by a certain day, then he was going to get guaranteed, right?
It was bad. It was a tough restructure. It would have just blown they couldn't restructure. They couldn't do it the way they wanted to. They couldn't come to agreement. Well, here's just the reason why I brought it up is who's left over. Reed Blankenship was a great find, but I think he's better as a third safety. Javon Wallace on the final year of his deal, and you have Sasha. These guys aren't starters. So, as you said, to move on here, we're going to give Howie, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt that they're not going to take a year. They're not going to take a year off, but they're not. They don't want to take a step back. They still want to be very competitive. He said that. I mean, I listened to every interview he did around the Super Bowl and before it, and also the combine. Well, actually, it's more the combine interviews. I'm talking about the Super Bowl combine interviews. Everything you said is true, but he also said it a couple times. Hey, listen, we're not throwing the season away. We're going to be very competitive, but how they do it is the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows what cornerback in July who didn't get his contract extension is going to be upset like Tyreek Hill was, and then all of a sudden you got the 10th over. Well, I shouldn't say July. It could be in in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and all of a sudden, just like with AJ Brown, right? All of a sudden you got this 10th overall pick, and some superstar wants to get traded, and Howie's like, oh shoot, I got another first round pick, so I'll just bam, get this guy in, and he's cost controlled or whatever. So you just never know what's going to happen there. All right, let's take a break real second, hear a word from our great sponsors. All right, free agency updates as well. Now, last week talked about Minshew. Well, I forgot what you said last week about Minshew. That
nothing really. There's nothing
there.
Yes.
Okay, any update there?
Yeah, it's just a small one. Not a secret. He's always made this clear that he wants to compete for a starting job. Our understanding is they're not going to close the door on him if he can't find what he wants. I don't know if they'll wait for him either, if he can't find what he wants in a couple weeks, but we're just told the door's not closed for him to come back. We'll see what they want to do. That's it. I mean, and here's the reason. I mean, when you look at the amount of teams, like he could be a bridge quarterback for a year because we know that 4 quarterbacks are probably going to go in the first round. Richardson's going to go in the first round. Depends on how high. So if it's Richardson's the quarterback for a team, maybe he's the bridge quarterback. Who knows? But, he's a competitive guy. We'll see.
Very competitive. You made the point. Pretty good market for backup quarterbacks. I don't think this will be an area where if the Eagles do lose Minshew, they're going to feel that they can't, find a good replacement. And there's always the draft as well.
It's the funniest thing. It's like the best year it's a buyer's market in free agency for backup quarterback. I'm sorry, number 2s and number 3s. But for number ones, it's a seller's market. It's Jimmy Garoppolo and everyone else. There's six backups. It's very strange. This
It is
quarterback
very
position,
strange.
folks, if you don't have one, you're looking for one.
There you go. All right, we talked about Isaac Seumalo. We both have heard that there's money on the table for Isaac for a lot of teams. So he's ranked as very highly on a lot of boards, and the fact that some teams. What did you say last week? One team said they could see him playing tackle, like he's that athletic.
Well, he's got, I guess, in college he played left tackle.
He did,
and that was not lost on his. At Oregon State. I mean, he was around 6'4", but he could play either side, the tackle if you need him to. In a pinch, again, it's not like you're doing every week. He's not a full-time left tackle. But he could play guard or center. We know that. The Eagles drafted him to be Kelce's replacement. Oops. Who knew?
Yeah.
We'll get into Kelce in a minute. We got an update on him. Small one. But yeah, Isaac has been a good story. He's on that, not quite the Pro Bowler. I call him the rung down. He's just a very respected player. And again, at guard and center, it's not a good group. You nailed this weeks ago when you said, don't be shocked if it gets a major deal. Oh, yeah. And I know you'd said a couple weeks ago there was a team that had him as their top interior lineman. And then we had more reporting on this. Same thing. We're hearing that.
Yep.
We know teams have him over Connor McGovern, the center for the Jets, over Bradberry, over Brad Bozeman, who bounced back year for the Panthers. So yeah, he's good. Center market. That's the center market. And the guard market. Dalton Risner's out there, but we think teams have him over him. We think Isaac's over him. Nate Davis is an athletic, smaller guard. That's pretty much it, man. Of the top.
Yeah. Seumalo's going to do well. And you know what? I don't know if you count this as playing tackle in the NFL, but in 2016, he was not a starter because they had Brandon Brooks at right guard, and they had who did they have at left guard in 2016? Why can't I remember? Doug's first year, it wasn't. Was it Alan Barbary? No, it wasn't.
Alan Barber. Yeah,
Barber.
I remember we couldn't fit. The joke was, it Barbary? Is it Barbie? Yeah, Alan Barber or
It
Barber?
Yeah, I know. It wasn't Wisniewski yet because he was a backup from the 2017 team. Who was the left guard in 2016? Come on.
Yeah, I think it was Alan Barber.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow, how about that? Okay, so Seumalo would frequently come in as the sixth offensive lineman and line up next to Lane Johnson as the extra OT when they wanted to pound the ball. Okay. So he was tackle eligible, as you like to say. But he was a big – if you remember the Ravens game, they were down, and they ran their way back into that game with Ryan Matthews and Wendell Smallwood, and they went to a six-man offensive line. Carson had the extra protection, and they wore the Ravens down there, scored the touchdown at the end of the game. Now, PAT would have tied it, but Doug said, screw it. We're like 5-8 or whatever. We're going for 2 here. They went for 2. The Ravens zero blitz. I think Martindale was the defensive coordinator. And a pass from Carson to Jordan Matthews got tipped by the last blitzer, and they lost the game. But it was a really good comeback. They were down by double digits going into the fourth quarter. But I do remember Seumalo playing a lot of tackle. If you consider that he's not pass protecting a whole lot from that alignment, but he was out there. So
you got a good memory, my man.
Yeah, I wanted to walk down memory lane with that.
Wouldn't Vitae, Big V, be a part of that or no?
Well, he was drafted the same year as Seumalo, so he was a backup tackle.
Okay.
Well, that's weird. Why would they use Seumalo over Big V?
I'm sure you're right. I'm just looking at their roster, man.
And Seumalo was drafted higher. Remember, Big V was a 6th round pick, was he not?
Yeah, Vitae was 5th, and Isaac was the 3rd. Yeah. You know what's great? Josh Andrews is still playing.
Josh Andrews, wow.
He was with that team 2014, undrafted free agent, who I think played for Chip. Did he not at Oregon?
Yeah, Chip brought him in. Yep.
There you go.
And he was with New Orleans this past year, right? He was starting when they came to play the Eagles.
I was blown away when Josh Andrews was starting. I was like, what are the teams missing? I mean, that's a pretty good story that he's still going.
Definitely. Well, you see that with offensive linemen, I feel like more than any other position, like rookie free agents or undrafted free agents who can come in and play a little bit. You see that more often there. That and running backs, of course.
Yes.
All right, Kelce. What do we got on Kelce?
I mean, yeah, all we're told is because we wanted to find out how he was, how he felt. Because, some seasons he's more sore than others. We're told he felt really good. By the way, his brother Travis was awesome on Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you saw it. I mean, he was
did. It was
really
funny.
good.
Yeah, he was good.
What a ham. He has, to be clear, he's not made a decision. I know he's got a media career waiting whenever he's done. Jason, he's. I know there are, whether it's networks or who knows what he wants to do, but he has not made his decision yet. We'll see what happens. But I just want to bring this up because I'm always curious with him because whether he feels, did he close the season feeling well? He felt good.
So. Yeah, well, I ran into him at the combine, and he looked like high energy, typical Jason Kelce. He looked like he was feeling good. He was walking good. He was joking around. Brent Selleck was there, college teammate. And then, like, literally 10 minutes later, I ran into Connor Barwin. I felt like it was like Cincinnati Alumni Day in Indianapolis there. So, no, it wouldn't surprise me if he came back. I mean, who knows? But he looks like somebody who's feeling good and doesn't, sometimes after the season, you can tell guys are still nursing things or not feeling great. He was looking good. Sure. So good news on there. All right, Javon Hargrave. I said it this last podcast. There was an AFC executive, high-ranking executive, who estimated to me he thought Hargrave would get 13 to 15 million on the open market. And I looked at him side-eyed and I said, I think he might get more than that. I still think he's going to get more than that. Yeah,
he got 13 the last time.
Right. But here's the crazy thing. We have confirmed and verified this. I can't understand what Howie was thinking with the whatever restructure he signed him a year, because he's going to leave the Eagles with a dead cap number that's higher than normal. We know Howie likes dummy years, voidable years, where there's little bits of signing bonus, right? Prorated bonus that are absorbed that you have to take. But 11 point or whatever it is, 11 to 12 million, which is I think what it is pretty high for a guy not to be on your team.
Yeah, man, this is the thing with these because I know they look at it as because the cap goes up. This is the first year of the big TV money.
Mm-hmm.
But you hate to have that cap charge of 12+ million when the guy's not on the team because the contract voids. That's why he's a free agent. It was was a 3-year void. Let's see what it was.
Right, and because it voids, Adam, just to let our listeners know and our viewers know, this is not like they're releasing him. You can't post June 1 this, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this is the cap charge.
Yeah. This is just this is just the void the void dead cap charge.
Right.
Yes, this is it because he's a free agent. So that another thing for Patreon, we're definitely we've got a guy who's going to come on and help us because we do a decent job with this stuff, but we're not experts at it.
You mean like a capologist, right?
I ran into my guy when a former guy who's in the agent business was going to help. He said he'd be happy to do it.
Cool.
Don't want to give out the name yet because we haven't got the date set yet, but that'll be. You know what? It is March. Do we want to save him for April? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can do another one in March.
Okay, because it won't take very long. I just want to. It's so funny. This just is what happens when you go out in Indy. Everyone, I know you like to ask, hey, what do you think of how the way Eagles do this, and what do you think of this player for the Eagles and all that stuff? Every once in a while, I go, hey, how do you like the way the Eagles do contracts? They go, ton of respect for how I don't like doing voidables. A couple guys said that. Now,
I bet
the reason why you do voidables is you feel like you could keep your roster together longer. Mm-hmm. And they've done a great job of doing that, but there's a price to pay.
Sure. It is no doubt. It's a circumvention of the salary cap because you're literally
legal.
I'm not. Of course, that's why it's a It's a great loophole. It's a fantastic idea. It's a way to keep more talented players together by just spreading out their salary over years and years and years and lowering it for the one specific year. So it's a great idea. I think where NFL owners, because owners are the ones, as you always say, have the final say on the budget, and some are probably not as, what's the word I'm going to looking for? I think Jeffrey Lurie gets it when Howie puts it to him, like, yeah, you're taking dead cap charges, but they're against a cap that goes up every year, so it's like a smaller percentage. It's like the whole scheme they had in Office Space, where you're only stealing like a fraction of a penny every single day, and then oops. But anyway, I think some owners who are used to making money a certain way don't like the idea of paying somebody who's not working for you that year. I think that,
Well, but they're not paying for him. It's all it is
I know
cap
that, but I think that they see that on their books and they're like, something doesn't, like they see $12 million for Hargrave. He's not on my team. What's going on here? You know,
It's
they
a
don't
cap
get it.
charge, right? It's not cash, but yeah,
I know that. I know. I just think that it's uncomfortable for.
It's weird.
For
Yeah, it's a weird deal. Yeah, it is weird, but it's purposeful because they knew what they knew what they were doing when they did it, and this was going to happen.
Right.
But it's the Hargrave market. It's just, again, he's the top guy. He's the top pass rusher. He's going to get paid. This is the way it is.
He is. He will. All right. We'll see. And it could be like 20. I know some people doubt that, whether it could be 20 million.
Yeah.
I don't doubt anything after Christian Kirk got 20 million. So are you telling me a
Kirk
pass
got
rusher
18,
can't
yeah.
get it? Yeah. I don't doubt
Kirk got 18 as a slot receiver.
Yeah.
Slot.
18. Right. As
what? A slot receiver, 18 million? Are you serious?
And then they went and paid Zay Jones, right? Like $9 million a year, right? And
he's a good, much. He's a good player, third receiver.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is the case, but I remember agents telling me for years, they would tell the Browns, if you're signing my player, you're gonna have to pay because you guys don't win.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
you got to pay the tax.
Yeah, no, in a way, tax. Yeah. Zay Jones got $8 million a year to be a backup. Goodness gracious.
I know, it's unbelievable. Plus, because I didn't mean that as no state tax. I meant you have to pay you're a bad team tax, right? You have to overpay.
I'm sure everyone got it.
It's right. But then you think about it, Florida doesn't have the state tax. So Christian Kirk might have doubled the money that he's actually
getting. That's probably why because the agent was telling teams last year, Kirk's agent, that he goes, yeah, you think we're taking 18 million. There were other teams, because other teams were saying that the agent was boasting that he had even other teams could get him even more than 18 million. I wouldn't doubt it. Free agency is strange. It's so strange.
How many people do you think thought that guy was bluffing when he was telling teams he had 18 plus on the table?
I remember. I just remember hearing from teams about this. They're like, "Oh, we're out, man. This agent saying he's got." It might have been OBJ's agent. I can't remember. But he's just boasting, and like you just said, "Oh, we'll see." Mm-hmm. My hair when it got reported. I'm like, Christian Kirk. Yeah, I learned my lesson. It's the free market. You could complain all you want. He was an underachiever with the Cardinals. That's the case. But this is Doug Peterson had certain guys he wanted. He wanted Evan Ingram. He wanted Christian Kirk amongst a group of players. Because they were running spreads, they were running
he wanted West Coast speed. Slot.
Same as the Eagles in 17 before they drafted Goddard. 16, 17. This is what he wanted, and he got it. And they're a good team, by the way.
I think there's cause and effect there. I think he was scarred from his last two teams with the Eagles.
Funny.
I think he was scarred by having like guys like Deontay Burnett and Josh Perkins to throw to, and the 8 yards per or 5 yards per pass. Average, and said, I gotta get me speed. And then of course they have Calvin Ridley coming there.
What's that?
And then they got Calvin Ridley stepping into that mix.
Oh, how about that? Ridley, by the way, is going to make over 11 million because his contract got told because he was suspended for a year. Mm-hmm. They don't care. They're just like, hey, they got a roster here. They need help on defense, particularly corner. But anyway,
did you read his piece, by the way, in the Players Tribune?
No, whose?
Calvin Ridley's.
No, I'll read it.
It's phenomenal. Like,
oh, is it? Okay.
It's phenomenal. It's really good. I think, it was very easy and obvious, and I don't blame anybody. I probably made a joke here or there too about his betting, but when you read what went on in his life and what led to his moments of bad decision making,
sure.
And the fact that he was able to come forward and talk about it in the way he did, I highly recommend it. It's a great read. Awesome job by him to come forward like that. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back to wrap it up. But before we do that, we're going to tell you about our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with all their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's also hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop in at Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal.
And
all right, go ahead.
Two things with Sky Motor Cars. Is the best time in our lifetime still to buy a used car. The chip shortage is still there.
Yep.
These dealerships need used cars. And it's a great time to buy them. It really is. It's been good. It's new car prices are tough. There's not a lot of bargaining like what a lot of us have done have bought new cars. It's hard. But yeah, and then don't forget they ship cars. I mean, my goodness gracious, they ship cars across the country. A lot of the Eagles players get their cars there from Brett Schulter at Sky Motor, so they do a phenomenal job. Cannot recommend them more highly. And by the way, their reviews are ridiculous. They get like 5 O's on just about 5 out of 5 on just about every review. It's amazing.
How about that? All right, good job by Sky Motor Cars. All right, back to the free agents. So the one that confounds me the most is TJ Edwards. Confounding because we know he's going to get offers. He's got teams that are hot on him. We know that. We also know that he really likes being an Eagle. And so whenever you put somebody in this decision where they have to choose money over, where their heart is, that's tough. You can never predict. I know a lot of people think everyone always goes for the money. That's not necessarily true, right? Wasn't there a couple of times last offseason where the Eagles made a comparable offer or right there with somebody? Maybe even there were times, I think with the Byron Jones thing that you reported, the money might have even been a little better, but Byron Jones really wanted to go to Miami that year because he wanted to be out of the NFC East. He wanted a new locale.
Correct.
So
you got a good memory.
There are some occasions where it's the money isn't always the number one factor. I mean, obviously it's got to be there. It can't be lowball.
It's number one, but mostly, but but I would say this: the players for the most part really like playing in Philly. Obviously, everybody loves to win, and the Eagles, they treat their players really well. If you saw the NFLPA survey, they got dinged on 2 things that has nothing to do with the way that the players are treated. Just a little bit of a family issue in the stadium. The players and the agents, and it's particularly in recent years, they've said, and the medical staff got great grades because remember when we started these shows in 17 and 18, the medical staff was not, or excuse me, 18, medical staff was not getting great grades, but they're getting good grades now.
True. Now, let me ask you about the market for TJ. Yeah. We know there are teams that are going to be interested, but sorry about that. There's also a decent number of linebackers, off-ball linebackers who are going to be free agents, right? I mean, and plus Bobby Wagner is now on the market. He didn't have a terrible year last year. So do you think that might lower the price on a TJ Edwards? Well, I mean, I think he'll be evaluated as they evaluate him anyway, but
here are the top guys. Tremaine Edmonds of the Bills. He's the top of the market. He'll get a huge deal. Really good football player. I'm kind of surprised that Buffalo didn't extend his contract.
I am too.
After that, Drew Tranquil of the Chargers is very underrated. He's gone through some injury issues, but he's a very productive tackler. Van Der Esch, who's had some injury issues with his neck, but he's a good football player, great size. Eric Kendricks, by the way, was cut, surprisingly, by the Vikings, cap issue. Right. They're trying to get through. And then you got TJ Edwards, who's been a great story of development. Doesn't have an injury history. He's a 34 inside linebacker, 43 middle linebacker. It's the question is he 10 million player? Is he an 8 million? Is he 6? That, as you said, if it's kind of like, here's another one for you before we move on to the next player. Well, because if you're TJ, let me ask you this, because look, guys could do what they want with their own money. But if they're 500 grand off, is that enough to really leave? Now, if it's 2 million off, different story. But if they're 500 grand off, Maybe you want to stay.
point. That's the point I was going to make. I think that there are some things in the Eagles' favor here. One, he wants to play. Two, he's not in the top 3, I don't think, as you just mentioned, of free agent linebackers.
Inside guys.
Inside, yes. Coverage linebackers.
Honestly, you could make the case. He's right there with Tranquil. I think Tranquil's a little better. Van Rush has had some injuries. Kendricks just got cut. He's an older player. Levante Davidson near the end of his career.
Yeah,
but
no,
again,
I think you were right, though, saying Edmonds and Van Der Esch and Tranquil. All right, so maybe he's 3, tied with 3 or 4, but he's not the number 1 guy.
Yes.
What about Okereke? Is he? I can never pronounce his name.
Okereke, yeah. Now he was a 43 outside linebacker.
Right.
Shaq Leonard was hurt last season. He's the middle linebacker. He's going to get a big deal. And see, is he an off the ball linebacker? Yes, but he's not really a middle or could he play it? I guess, but he's playing the 43 front only.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're right. He's an off the ball linebacker. The question is, I still think it's interesting. I would think Eberflus, who's the Bears head coach who coached him with the Colts, you would think they would be involved since they might. I don't know if it's a record. It's ridiculous how much cap space they have. They're a bad team. They got a lot of money to spend, so maybe they'll get it done. Who knows?
Devin Bush did not have a very good career with the Steelers. No, he's probably in the 3 to 5 range as far as top linebackers. But I don't know what that's going to mean for his price tag.
We'll talk more about this on Monday's show. Our Monday morning show about kind of where the money goes.
All right. So moving on, we'll get to Bradberry. It's funny you mentioned how the Jags need a cornerback help, and they've been spending money, and you can sort of see them being in on the race for James Bradberry. There's going to be a bunch of teams. I know the Vikings want to strike it big in the secondary if they have the opportunity to do that, either at corner or safety, if not both. The Cardinals are a team that I've told have been watch out for at corner. So, I mean, Adam, there's never any shortage of teams that want corners.
Look, I've learned my lesson. Never say never about a guy coming back. Just when you think there's no chance a guy comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Bradberry would definitely be surprised if he comes back. You made a great point with Jacksonville. They cut they cut the corner.
They cut Henderson? Was that the one?
No, CJ they traded him a couple years ago.
That's right. Not Henderson.
They cut Shaq. They cut
not Griffin, right? Shaq Griffin?
Shaq Griffin, yeah. They cut Shaq Griffin. Thank you. They cut Shaq Griffin. So right now, it's really Tyson Campbell has been a good story development. Trey Herndon's up is more of a nickel, and Darius Williams. They need another corner. I like your point about Minnesota. That makes so much more sense because we could all talk about how fraudulent the Vikings record was at 13-4 because they set NFL record for winning close games, which is amazing. Still a pretty good feat. But they're so weak at corner. They need him way worse to me, Bradberry. That one would make more sense.
If I were them, I would target Jamel Dean first, maybe, because Flores likes to blitz a lot. So, we know Bradberry performed better in a half zone man match type scheme than a pure man cover type scheme. So when I watched the Jags against the Eagles this past year, they blitzed a decent amount, but they played a ton of zone. They even zone blitzed a lot. With Mike Caldwell as their defensive coordinator. So I almost feel like it would make more sense for Bradberry to go to that type of team than the Vikings to go after Dean. But you know what? Corners, they're going somewhere. They're going to
need it.
Come on.
Vikings are in dire straits because Cam Dantzler is tall, but has been in and out of lineup. Andrew Booth, who didn't really play as a rookie. Evans, who's a 4th rounder last year, didn't play a lot. So they need help. They need help. They have a cap issue. I know they're looking at some restructures. Dalvin Cook might get restructured. Adam Thielen, we'll see about his future. They have a vesting date on his contract. They have to make a decision. Didn't sound great for him to return, but we'll see. When we're at the combine, we'll see what they do with him. Remember Justin Jefferson's they could extend his contract, so it's not a Viking show here, but we're just we like talking NFL. So
and hard to see a pathway for Thielen going back there, right? I mean, because they're going to have to pay Justin. They've got Osborne, who's pretty good.
Yeah, he's
them.
good.
They traded, of course, for Jalen Reagor, who they probably want to see him get on the field a little bit more.
Yep.
So it's hard to say. We'll see.
And then Epps I don't know about you. I've not heard a thing on Epps. One thing we know it's going to happen. Gannon, Jonathan Gannon, Jim Schwartz, Steichen. You talk about the poachers. These former Brandon Brown, the assistant GM of the Giants?
Of the Giants. Yep. You got Ian Cunningham of the Bears. Yeah.
Ian, exactly. Bears. You know what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who am I forgetting, folks? What other teams? Tell me.
Catherine Rach is with the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
So Andy Weidel is with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You nailed it.
By the way, does Epps not play like a Steeler? I mean, like he's almost like a perfect Steeler, except that they're pretty good at because they have Minka and did they bring back Casey?
He's a bet, but he's more of a third safety. Terrell Edmonds is up.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, they're more likely to draft a guy than sign a free agent. But
you know what's going to happen. You know these guys. This is when you've won a Super Bowl with a guy, you've gone deep in the playoffs. You want your own guys. It was, and then Nick brought in Pascal, and that I know they didn't have great stats, but the guy, I love what Nick called him. What did he say? Is the enforcer? What a great name.
Yeah, the enforcer. Never heard a wide receiver called the enforcer before.
The enforcer, Arn Anderson from WCW days.
It's like some Heinz Ward stuff right there.
What's that?
It's like some Heinz Ward stuff right there. A
receiver
being great an enforcer.
Name. Oh, he's so he's a Hall of Famer, right? Isn't Heinz in the Super Bowl? I mean, Hall of Fame?
No, I don't think so.
Why did I think Heinz Ward was in the Hall of Fame?
I'll look it up, but because he was kind of, I mean, for a slot receiver to get into the Hall of Fame, you really got to be.
I don't know why I thought I know he's coaching the XFL.
Is he? Because I thought he was with the Jets for a little while, right?
No, that was Miles Austin.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, Heinz was with the Jets. He was an assistant receivers coach, I think.
Oh, yeah, okay. He was not. You're right, but he wasn't the lead guy.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, today's his birthday. We just happen to be talking on him on his 47th birthday. Yeah. Today's his birthday. He made 4 Pro Bowls. I don't think that's going to be enough for a wide receiver.
My bad. Yeah, I don't know why I thought he might, because the NFL, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's different than Baseball Hall of Fame. Although I can't believe Roland got in, but that's enough.
There you go.
Sorry.
All right. So next time we're talking to everybody will be Monday morning. And
notebook empty
when all the fun starts.
And by the way, just warning you folks, it's not going to be like the 2020 show when we just watch my language. We kind of broke the people went out of their minds. We're like, it's going to be Byron Jones, they're all in, blah 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 blah. And you had the Hargrave note. I don't. Maybe over the weekend we'll find something out we weren't expecting, but I'm not expecting fireworks this time. Never say never, though.
Yeah. No, but we do have to remind everybody that when you say the team is all in, it doesn't mean they're definitely getting them. It means that they're their top target. They're going to do their best, and then let the chips fall where they may. That's
right. Exactly. We're just saying and I know the Eagles. It's funny. Well, I'll leave you with one thing. I just know from talking to the Eagles then that they were dejected. They didn't get Byron Jones. And who knew he would get hurt with Miami? That's not the point. But sometimes, because remember they wanted him because he was a movable chess piece. And they were going to, I don't remember what their offer was, but Byron Jones made so much money. And remember, no state income tax in Miami. It's just the money that Byron got was $16.5 in March of 2021. 16.
Well, he's a richer man right now. Did not have a great career there, but he is a very very
he's
wealthy
okay
man.
Physically. It's awful what happened to him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize something that bad happened.
He went out. He had a social media post a couple weeks ago and just talking about how much pain he's in. He can't jump anymore.
Oh, that's
and
terrible.
He said he wasn't retiring, but football seems to be on hold down. Dolphins are cutting at the start of the league year.
That's rough. He's a good dude. They called him the Senator.
Great guy.
UConn because he was such.
I met him at ESPN in 2016, and he was such a nice dude. And he had that unbelievable combine worker. He was a good player for the Cowboys. I just think it's another one of these situations. You see a guy like Gardner-Johnson. I'm sorry, CJ. Byron's much bigger, better athlete, but you see a guy who could do a lot for you, and it only takes one team, folks. In this case, in the Byron Jones thing, it took 3.
Yeah, there you go. It did. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast of Eagles Intel. Want to thank everybody, all of you, for following along with us and flying with us Inside the Bird.